So now we are going to welcome Anna Hope, who is one of the really, really important people in the guild. And actually, if you have been to the Willets Farmers Market, you have seen her. Anna Hope has been doing the market for as long as I can remember. She is incredibly knowledgeable. So I'm going to read the little intro. Hi, Anna Hope. Okay, here we go.
Hi.
Anna Hope. Hi, Anna. Hi, Anna Hope has been studying herbalism for over 15 years. She balances learning from experience and observing the natural world with reviewing scientific studies and historical uses of plants. She has been making and selling herbal products under her brand Elemental Botanicals for 4 years, and she has taught herbal classes at Tree of Life School, Buckeye Gathering, Calendula Festival, and School of Adaptive Agriculture. There it is. She's a founding member of the Mendocino County Herb Guild. Her class is titled Herbal Allies for Fire Recovery, which is another very important topic. And Anna Hope will introduce the power of herbal medicine for first response to wildfire and smoke-induced symptoms, as well as ongoing stress and trauma release needed after catastrophic events. We will explore the potential for herbal plants to be first responders to restoring the post-fire ecosystem and dive deeper into the role of native medicinal plants in fire ecology. Welcome, Anna Hope.
Thank you. So that was a great introduction. Yes, I'll introduce some of the herbs. This here next to me is mullein, which is a really great respiratory support herb. It can be taken as a tea or in a tincture. Another one that's great for respiratory symptoms is Grandilia, which is just now blooming, which is so exciting to see it open because it has these really cool pods. Yeah, these are like not sharp, but they're kind of pokey and cool looking. And another really cool thing about it is it has this, I don't know if you can see, but as the flower begins to open, there's this little cup that starts to fill with a white resin. And it's another name for this plant is called sticky cup gumweed because it has this white gum, and that's where the medicine of the plant mainly lies. So this time of year, you can start picking these flower buds as they're opening, as they have this white resin on them. You can either use them as a tea fresh or put it in an alcohol for tincture. And an alcohol actually helps extract this white resin very well. And these are especially good for a dry cough, like the kind of cough you would get after too much smoke inhalation during a fire or some such thing. Another one, a great respiratory support herb is Yerba Santa, which is a native shrub in this area. Well, this is, I think, going to be the herb of the day for this talk because I'll be talking about it all throughout in many different aspects. But it can also be used as a tea or a tincture. Its leaves also, this is a dried version, but its leaves, when fresh, you can tell they're like somewhat resinous as well. So I want to talk about herbal allies for fire recovery, but kind of in the broader sense of recovery in the context of human recovery, herbs that can help with symptoms induced by fire, like some of the ones I just went over. Ecological recovery, how many of the same herbs can actually help ecosystems recover from the fires. And then cultural recovery, what are the cultural understandings and practices that have led to the catastrophic fires, and how can we change them, and what herbs can help with this. In permaculture, also I believe in biology, there's a term sorry, pioneer species. I couldn't think of it because I'm actually trying to replace that term with a different term, which is first responder species. Just because the term pioneer is somewhat linked with kind of a colonial mindset where people are coming into a space as colonial pioneers, yet there's already someone existing in that space. It doesn't seem like the appropriate word to use in the context of the plant world. So I like to use the term first responders because it's more like something has happened to damage the ecosystem, and then these plants can come in as the first responders to help heal it, just as medical first responders are the first to respond to a human emergency. So some of these species are actually do really well in disturbed soils, such as thistle or dandelion. These are both really medicinal plants as well for humans. Thistle is an amazing liver cleanser. Dandelion as well cleanses the liver and is very nutritive. So these plants can enter an ecosystem that's been damaged and help to kind of hold the soil in place, restore nutrients to the area, and that sort of thing. And I just find it really interesting how these plants that can help us can also help the ecosystem. And that's kind of going to be the theme of the talk today. And the aha moment when I first had this realization, I was at an ecosystem restoration council a little over a year ago, and leading a discussion on exactly this, how herbs can help be first responders during emergencies, can help with symptoms induced by fire, etc. And one of the other herbalists there, one of the other women, was describing a story about a friend's land who had burnt. And one of the first plants that came back after the fire was yerba santa. And she found it interesting that after the fire was burned, after the land was totally charred and black, and after the people had been exposed to so much smoke, the first plant to come back after all of that was yerba santa, something that can help both the human symptoms of too much smoke inhalation, and it's the first one on the scene to come back and be like, here I am again, I'm here to like reestablish this ecosystem. Another power of yerba santa is that it can also be burnt as an incense or a smudge, similar to white sage, specifically for moving through a difficult situation that feels very heavy and nearly impossible to change. So I want to go for a moment into the cultural recovery and outline some of the problematic themes that have led us to this point in time. Going back as far as 1493 with the doctrine of discovery, although we could go back further. I wanted to start with this pivotal moment, the year after Columbus sailed the ocean blue, when the Pope issued a papal bull that's known as the doctrine of discovery. Sorry, I'm reading a message on the screen. This is the yerba santa again. Someone asked, do you have an example here? Okay. All right. The year after Columbus sailed the ocean blue, the Pope issued a papal bull that's known as the Doctrine of Discovery. This document authorized Christian European nations to go out to these newly encountered territories and discover them. And discovery was authorized on the basis that the people in these lands were not Christian, they were considered pagan, and the Roman Catholic Church had a history of taking pagan lands and putting them to good Christian use. And for more details, you can read the book or watch the movie Pagans in the Promised Land, Decoding the Doctrine of Discovery by Stephen Newcomb, who's a renowned Native American author who's been researching this for many years. And because the church acted as an overarching intermediary between the European nations, the doctrine of discovery became an international rule by which the European nations could divide non-Christian landscape between themselves based on who discovered which area first. So under this doctrine of discovery, the land could be taken, and the land itself was seen as the sum of its natural resources, which were to be extracted for the wealth of these Christian nations. And the indigenous people could be enslaved, both in Africa and the Americas. So here's where we begin to see the mindset that led to the chain of events, which has created both the catastrophic fires we see in the forests and the fires of revolution in the streets, where oppressed peoples are standing up to say, enough, no more. And so when we say people are acting entitled to ownership of land, entitled to treating people a certain way, this is where that entitlement is coming from, is from this document that actually authorizes it. So here's where we can take out our Yerba Santa and burn some to help deal with this difficult situation and to help create change and shift that's needed. So the mindset of the indigenous people of this land was much different. The land was meant to be taken care of in reciprocity for what humans used from it. Humans were an integral part of the ecosystem, not removed from it, and being in nature was about being in relationship with all the other natural entities, such as trees, plants, animals, water, wind, fire. So now we're going to dive deep into the ecological recovery and how we can use herbal allies to do that. One of the first things we can do is accept that we live in a fire ecology. The native people who have lived here for over 13,000 years and still live here today use fire to maintain the landscape. So it's a way of fighting fire with fire, because slow, small, controlled burns can help prevent the fuel buildup that leads to catastrophic fires. And I told the story about how the Yerba Santa was the first plant to return after recent fires. And that's because it is genetically evolved to thrive in a fire ecology, along with other plants such as willow, elderberry, native blackberry, oak, mugwort. These plants actually thrive and come back even stronger after they're burnt. These are plants that provide humans with food and medicine. The bark of the willow tree is pain relieving for head and body aches, while the branches can make useful baskets. The elderberry tree has medicine in both its flowers and berries. The flowers can help relieve fevers and flu symptoms, while the berries are high in antioxidants, bioflavonoids. They boost immunity and are an amazing antiviral, as well as the stalk of the elderberry, because it's hollow, it's pithy, and you can hollow it out easily. It's traditionally used to make musical instruments such as flutes and the Native American clapper sticks. Native blackberries provide us with nutrient-rich food as well as medicine from the root, which is a powerful astringent. Oak provides nutrient-dense acorns as food as well as an astringent medicine in its bark. Mugwort is pretty amazing in a lot of different ways. It's Can be taken as a tea. It's supposed to help you have more vivid dreams. It's also a cleanse for parasites. It'll help get them out of your system. It can be used in a rub topically for muscle pains, and then it also can be burnt as a smudge. My teacher, who's a Native American herbalist and basketry maker, Corinne Pierce, says that mugwort is good for those days when everything changes in your life, like big shifts, like you move to a new place or you lose a friend or something that alters your life in a big way. Mugwort is very helpful either as a smudge or taking a mugwort bath. It's good for those times of big transition. So these plants are all so helpful to us. How can we help them? And that's something maybe we don't think about very often with wild plants. Like I know plants in our gardens, we know we have to tend them, water them, nurture them in certain ways. But the thing is that for the Native people, this was their garden. Like they tended ecosystem as if it was a garden. And so we, as humans, have the capability to create fire, and we can provide this to these plants, the fire that they need to thrive. And the ashes from the fire have minerals in them like phosphorus, potassium, calcium. These minerals get washed into the ground and invigorate the plants as they grow back, hardening the bark of the oak to make it more impervious to insects and fungus that might attack it. Fires can also help killing predatory insect eggs and larvae, as well as harmful fungus. So many of the widespread diseases we see in trees like pine borer beetle and sun oak death have become so widespread because humans have been out of balance with this ecosystem for a while now. And so bringing this right relationship back in terms of not thinking of nature as something out there, outside the small fence of our cultivated area, but seeing the entire landscape as our garden, because it has the potential to provide us with so much, as far as like some of these herbs I've just listed, and some of the herbs that are actually beneficial to us after the fires. So how can we recover from this? How can we restore the environment, the culture, the people? For restoring the environment, I will direct you to the amazing work of Dennis Martinez, who's a mixed Odahoran, Native, Chicano, and Anglo man who's been doing restoration work for decades, mostly in the forests of Northwest Oregon, but he's worked with tribes in Northern California as well. And there's an amazing interview with him that's archived on TUC radio. And he's being interviewed by Maria Glyden, a Willits local. And it's a really amazing interview where he goes into all the work he's done restoring the land, trying to figure out how to restore the land, since it's something that's never really been done before. It's never had to have been done because it's never been this damaged before. It's never been extracted from in this sense for the past 10,000 years. He also speaks about how often it was the women who would be doing the fires, because the women were often the ones who were involved in tending the plants. And so they were the ones who would set these low fires that would move slowly through the underbrush. And he also spoke of the types of plants that existed here before, which might be different than there are currently. And if you're doing restoration work, what is your purpose? For example, the Native women would have preferred a pine because of the pine nuts they could gather from it for food over the Douglas fir. But people who are into forestry see the Douglas fir as more useful as a lumber tree. So when you're doing restoration, you have to think about what is the intent of the restoration, what is the relationship with the plants that you're restoring. And that's where we can kind of begin to mend it all, the people, the culture, and the environment, by creating this sense of relationship between the people and the ecosystem. And a good way to do that is really just to spend the time observing, sitting in nature with an open mind, and not having preconceived notions, and just observing the ways in which everything is working in concert, or maybe the ways that it's not, the ways that things seem out of balance. And really, before we engage in a lot of doing and a lot of agendas, it's really important to sit with the land and observe what is happening. And this observation in turn can help calm us and heal us as people as well. One of the plants, oh yes, I also want to talk about trauma recovery, because our world there's so traumatic. There's so much trauma inherent in it, but then also I know for those who have survived catastrophic fires or have lost homes, that there's this trauma that kind of lingers, where first you're in this fight or flight kind of state of mind, but then as that wears out, it kind of wears out your adrenals, and you enter this like ongoing trauma. And one of the best herbs I found to help with that is called Indian Warrior. It's a plant that grows only in early spring, and then it kind of dies back, and it grows only under, I found it only under madrone trees, although I've heard it grows also sometimes under manzanita or oak. But it's actually links with the roots of the madrone trees and will feed off of them. And it's this bright fuchsia flower that's really beautiful. And it's amazing in that it's one of the only herbs I know of that will help relax your deep tissue muscles, the muscles that are holding your skeleton together. And so when we have this tension and we're always like on watch or have this ongoing trauma, there's these muscles in us that are clenched almost permanently that we don't even know it's happening, because it's this underlying thing that just becomes normal. So the Indian Warrior is amazing for actually helping us to release in these places that are so deep we may have even forgotten they're there, and to relax into it. It's also an antidepressant, and which is really amazing for healing trauma. And so if you've had this kind of experience and you want to both heal yourself and heal the world, I would recommend doing what I said before, just maybe sitting under a tree and observing. You could bring the Indian Warrior tea or tincture with you to help you sink in a little bit deeper to yourself, and to be able to notice a little bit more what's going on around you once you can begin to relax more and focus on other things outside your own trauma. One last thing I want to mention is the power of mushrooms, especially turkey tails, are pretty amazing. And there's something that's like super abundant in our area of Northern California. They're really beautiful. They have this like swirl of different lines of different colors, which is why they're called turkey tails. But they're immune boosting, they're antiviral, they're cancer fighting. There's actually clinical studies being done on turkey tails fighting cancer, and their Paul Stamets claims to have cured his mother of cancer using only turkey tails. Well, I guess in concert with the traditional or Western medicine she was on. But another reason why I bring up mushrooms in regards to fire safety is that mushrooms that eat dead wood, what they're doing is eating the volatile oils in the wood. And if you've ever noticed that punky wood doesn't burn very well or very fast, so that's because a lot of these volatile oils have been eaten by fungi. And so if you have debris laying around, like so much debris, you can't chip it all or burn it all. One thing you can do is inoculate it with mushrooms. So this is stacking the functions of providing you with food and medicine, but it's also making the wood less burnable. So if you have logs in the forest around your house, you can turn those logs into mushroom logs, and then they will become less of a fire hazard, as well as providing you with a food source. I think we're almost at time for questions. And I'm not sure what else to say.
That's great, Anna Hope. Actually, we have a question here. So the question is, do you have an example of Yerba Santa there? And I thought you did, didn't you?
Yeah, I saw that question. I tried to answer it, but
okay,
this is the Yerba Santa.
Yes.
And this is dried, but I don't have a way of showing you a picture, but it's grows on a bush that's maybe at the most maybe 6 feet tall, but usually they're smaller, like a small shrubby bush, often growing along roadsides, kind of in the oak savanna chaparral kind of countryside.
So there doesn't have to be high elevation, does it? It's not high elevation.
Not super high elevation, but.
Right. So because that leads me to the other question about the Indian warrior, the Piticularis densiflora. Now, where would you say does that grow? Does it need high elevation a little bit? Or do we have that in the valleys too?
I'm not sure about the valleys. I mean, I've mostly seen it growing in the hills, but not necessarily like way far up in the hills.
Yeah, but the hills. Okay, now I have a bunch of other questions coming in for you. Would you please review teas to drink and or specific tinctures to have on hand when there are active fires close by?
Yeah, I would say the mullein is really great, as well as the yerba santa and the grindelia.
So this is in regard to teas rather than tinctures?
You can do tea or tincture with all of them. And then another one is L-campaign.
Yeah.
As well as OSHA root is amazing.
So the next question is how to dry and prepare mullein.
Um, I mean, it's pretty easy. You can just, when I harvest, I try not to harvest the entire plant.
Mm-hmm.
I just go around and pick a few leaves, a few healthy looking leaves, like not from the outer part and not from the inner part, just kind of this middle
Mm-hmm.
section. Pick a few leaves and then go. Often there's like many growing in an area, and then go to the next plant and do the same thing. And then I lay them on a rack to dry it.
Okay, and that it does take a while for them to dry.
It depends on the climate, but it doesn't take too long for them to dry.
Very good. Now the next question is, would you review what herbs to take ongoing post-smoke inhalation?
I guess that's similar to the other question. I mean, for all those same ones I mentioned for the lungs are good to keep taking if you have an ongoing cough. Especially the grandilia is good for like that dry, lingering cough that you
Yeah.
would get from smoke inhalation.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Okay, here's more. Okay, so we also have a question. If you're making a plan for firemen out working the lines, what would you suggest?
I mean, that's interesting because some of these herbs are bronchodilators, which means they dilate your lungs and enhance your capacity to take in oxygen, which
Yes.
ordinarily helps with a cough. But I would think in a situation where you're on the front lines inhaling smoke, it might not be as good to.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, actually. Yes, that's an excellent point. So then we would have to look at other options, how to support the system, while we don't want to open up the lungs while the acute, smoke exposure is happening, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for them, I would think something that's good for like reducing stress, but at the same time
Mm-hmm.
maintaining focus and heightened awareness.
Mm-hmm. Now here's another question. What was the name of the book you mentioned earlier? And do you have any other valuable resources for decolonizing herbal medicine?
The book was Pagans in the Promised Land, Decoding the Doctrine of Discovery by Stephen Newcomb.
Stephen.
And then I also wanted to, I have a link here that I'll put in the chat. That's the interview with Dennis Martinez.
That would be
which
wonderful. Yeah.
you should really check out. As far as
Okay, here's a bunch.
decolonizing herbal medicine, there's not a specific resource I can think of right now.
Yeah, well, this is a good start. And so we have questions coming in. So basically, if you were making tea with either yerba santa or mullein, what ratio of water to the herbs?
That's a good question. I mean, it kind of depends on how strong you want to make it, but I'd say like a mullein leaf like this.
Yeah.
to like 16 ounces of water. And
Mm-hmm.
then I would
So
throw
would you
in like,
use it fresh as well? Like if you didn't have any dry mullein, would you just use the fresh
yeah, you
mullein?
could definitely use it fresh. And then I'd maybe use like 3 or 4 of the yerba santa leaves with it.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Okay. Now, and I think that's self-explanatory. Why don't you pick the outer mullein leaves? Because we know that they are often not in prime shape anymore. Correct?
Yeah. And then, the plant still needs something to keep it going. So the outer
Yeah.
ones are kind of fading, and then the inner ones, there's just still coming up for like the new life of the plant. So you don't want to take that from it.
And I mean, mullein is so generous. I mean, it just has so much to give anyhow. So you don't have to take the whole plant. Okay,
And
next.
another interesting thing about mullein I forgot to mention is that it'll get really tall, maybe like up to 3 feet tall, and
Yeah.
that the center stalk, if you remove all of the leaves, if you harvest it at that time after it's gone to flower and set seeds, the center stalk is something that's used in traditional skills for starting fires by hand. So it's like becomes a stalk that you can kind of roll back and forth in your hands to create a little friction fire.
Oh, that's good to know. And if you had, I mean, basically, it wouldn't have to be a very long stalk, right? It could just, you could have a small piece, just have it in your backpack, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. All right. Here is another question. How do you inoculate wood around your house with mushrooms?
There are companies that sell the mycelium, which
Yeah.
you would need to use to inoculate. A great one is called Field and Forest. And then there's also Aloha Medicinals. But you would get the mycelium just either grown on sawdust or it's grown on wooden dowels. So with the dowels, you would get a drill bit that's like the same diameter as the dowel or maybe slightly bigger. And then you would drill into the log all along it, these holes, and then insert the dowel and then cover it with a bit of wax or mud to seal it in. But if you just have the sawdust inoculated with mycelium, you can just dust a little bit of it into holes in a similar way. But then you would have to keep it, you have to do it at the right time of year so that the mycelium stays wet enough that it doesn't dry out. In some climates, you might have to actually spray it with water every so often.
Yeah.
One good place to put inoculated logs is like along the edge of a bed that's already getting water as well.
Ah, okay. Very good. So, is there anything else you wanted to share? Because I have something else I wanted to mention. I think I got all the questions here. Okay, okay. So, as I mentioned earlier, Anna Hope, you have been doing the Willits Farmers Market for a long time. And I assume you will be there in the coming weeks as well?
Yes.
Okay, so people can connect with you. That is Thursdays from 3 to 6 at the corner of, see if I get this right, Main Street and West Mendocino. I think that's right. Yeah. And is there also still the option to buy plants from the guild in the next couple of weeks?
Yes. we're working on that. We need to get a nursery license, but
Oh,
we still have plenty of plants, and so we're working on
oh, okay.
getting all the paperwork squared away to be able
Oh,
to
that's
keep
great.
bringing them.
Yeah. All right. That's really wonderful. So is there anything else you wanted to share with us?
No, just remember to take care of yourselves. This is crazy times, and
Yeah.
we need to take care of ourselves and take care of each other as
Yeah.
best we can.
That sounds wonderful. So thank you very much for all this amazing information, and especially for the link. Now, this is a podcast, right? What we are seeing there, it's a podcast. Okay, Tina
Yeah,
says,
it's about restoring the forest
wonderful.
and the way Native people would tend the land and ways of restoring the forest and the different plants that grow there.
Well, that's really important. Yes, we should really get more knowledge in that direction. So here's a message for you. Thank you, Anna. Hope that was wonderful. Thank you, thank you, and I thank you too, Anna. Hope it was wonderful. And this is really important information because, I mean, knock on wood, we don't have an issue today, hopefully, but we have a very dry year again, obviously. The rivers are low, so we need to know how we can help ourselves to get through situations like fires in the summer. So thank you very much, and thank you for everything you have been doing from the get-go for the Guild. And I will see you at the farmers market. And on we go. Thank you so much, Anna.
Thank you, Claudia.
Okay. Bye.